What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Wrestling Decoded. And today we're making a case for belts. Not the most glamorous subject in wrestling, but one of the most revealing ones, because the way a company treats its championship titles tells you almost everything about its actual creative priorities at any given moment. Some titles get retired with a proper send-off, phased out gracefully when the story they were built to tell is genuinely finished. And then there are the ones on this list, championships that were quietly abandoned, unceremoniously merged, or simply stripped away before the story they were capable of telling had anywhere close to run its course. So today let's make the full case for 5 titles that deserved significantly better endings than the ones they actually got. Let's get into it. If you're into these deep dives into wrestling's forgotten history, that's exactly what this channel does. Go ahead and subscribe before we start, starting with the one that generates the most genuine debate every time it comes up, the Hardcore Championship, retired in 2002 after a 4-year run that started as pure spectacle and gradually became one of the most genuinely creative pieces of content WWE produced across that entire era. The title was introduced in 1998, initially as an extension of Mankind's character and the general Attitude Era appetite for unscripted feeling violence. For the first year or so, it functioned exactly as advertised, a reason to put people through tables and into dumpsters, with Mankind, Al Snow, and various other mid-card performers cycling through it for comedic or violent effect depending on the segment. Nothing about that early version of the title suggested it was going to produce anything particularly memorable beyond the immediate spectacle of the match itself. Then WWE added the 24/7 rule, and something genuinely interesting happened. Under the 24/7 stipulation, the Hardcore Championship could be won anywhere at any time by anyone who could get a 3 count on the current champion with a referee present. What started as a simple gimmick to generate extra content turned into a running storyline engine that produced genuinely innovative, often hilarious television for over 2 years. The title changed hands in airports, in hotel corridors, at catering tables backstage, and in one famously strange case, while the champion was asleep, a ref appearing out of nowhere to count a 3 count on a sleeping performer is exactly the kind of absurdist comedy that the Attitude Era could pull off because its audience was fully invested in the fiction enough to find the rules-breaking funny rather than immersion-destroying. Crash Holly's run with the title is particularly worth revisiting, a performer using the 24/7 rule to build a character arc entirely around being the most aggressively defended mid-card champion in company history. When the Hardcore Championship was retired in August 2002 as part of WWE's brand extension restructuring, the 24/7 rule went with it. And while the title's general concept was revived years later in a different form, the specific creative engine that the 24/7 rule represented, a championship that could generate content and character development in any location at any time without requiring a ring or a scheduled match, genuinely hasn't been replicated at the same level since. WWE's later 24/7 championship, introduced in 2019, tried to recreate that energy but never quite captured the specific blend of investment and absurdity that made the original version work. Here's a question worth sitting with. If a championship's primary creative function is generating consistent content and character moments rather than prestige, does that actually make it less valuable as a creative tool or more? The second title on this list is the one that makes the strongest case for genuine creative mismanagement, the Cruiserweight Championship, first retired in 2007 after a run that began in WCW and transitioned into WWE following the 2001 purchase of WCW's tape library and talent roster. The history of this championship is inseparable from the history of WCW's Cruiserweight division, which in the mid to late 1990s was genuinely the most consistently excellent wrestling being produced on American television. Rey Mysterio, Eddie Guerrero, Dean Malenko, Chris Jericho, Juventud Guerrera, La Parca. The list of performers who cycled through the WCW Cruiserweight Championship across that period reads like a who's who of the most technically gifted performers working anywhere in the world at that time. When that division transitioned into WWE, it retained genuine talent but lost the sustained creative investment that had made the WCW version special. The championship changed hands frequently, was occasionally treated as an afterthought on pay-per-view cards, and by 2007 was retired without significant ceremony. WWE's later attempts to revive the cruiserweight concept through the Cruiserweight Classic Tournament in 2016 and the subsequent 205 Live brand demonstrated both how much genuine talent existed in that weight class and how difficult it proved to sustain a dedicated creative infrastructure around it. The original Cruiserweight Championship deserved to anchor a fully realized division rather than serving as a decorative addition to shows that were primarily focused on performers working in completely different styles. The third championship on this list sits at the intersection of creative ambition and commercial reality, the European Championship, retired in 2002 after a 5-year run that produced several genuinely great title reigns and at least one championship program that belongs in the conversation for best mid-card storytelling WWE produced in the late 1990s. Triple H's early European Championship work, before he became the dominant main event force his career eventually turned him into, is a genuinely underrated chapter of his career, proof that he was capable of compelling character work in a secondary title picture before he ever got near the World Championship conversation. Shawn Michaels winning the European Championship by defeating Triple H, then immediately defending it against a returning D-Generation X member, produced genuinely layered storylines that used the title as a prop for character development rather than simply as a thing to be fought over. Quick pause here. Drop a comment on which of these retired championships you most wish had been handled differently, because I think this one in particular tends to get overlooked in conversations about WWE's mid-card history. The fourth championship carries a specific creative argument behind it that connects to how WWE thinks about its women's division in different periods. The Women's Tag Team Championship, introduced in 2019 and subsequently treated with a level of inconsistency that made it difficult for the belts to build genuine prestige across consistent holders. The problem with this title wasn't its concept, which was sound, or its initial introduction, which generated real excitement. The problem was the lack of sustained creative commitment to building a proper women's tag team division around it. A championship needs a division to give it meaning. Without regular tag team matches featuring consistent pairings with genuine character development, the title ends up cycling through makeshift partnerships that don't have enough shared history to make their defenses feel consequential. The Women's Tag Team Championship deserved the same sustained creative infrastructure that the men's tag division, at its best, had always used to generate compelling programming. And the final championship on this list is the one that arguably had its retirement handled most carelessly given its history. The Intercontinental Championship's occasional demotion to near irrelevance across periods when WWE's creative focus narrowed exclusively to the world title picture. To be clear, the Intercontinental Championship itself still exists and has produced genuinely great television across multiple recent eras, but there have been extended stretches across its history where the title effectively functioned as a placeholder, defended on pre-show slots, cycled through reigns too short to develop any narrative momentum, and treated by commentary and creative alike as a consolation prize rather than a genuine achievement. The Intercontinental Championship's greatest periods: Ricky Steamboat versus Randy Savage at WrestleMania III, Mr. Perfect's reign defining a character, Shawn Michaels' ladder match at WrestleMania X, all shared one specific quality: the title felt like the center of its own story rather than a secondary element in somebody else's. Whenever that quality disappears, the championship effectively gets retired in all but name, even while the physical belt continues changing hands. So here's the actual diagnosis across all 5 of these cases. Championships don't get retired too soon because companies run out of talent to put them on. They get retired too soon because the creative investment required to make a title feel genuinely meaningful is significant, and companies facing roster management pressure, brand extension complications, or simple creative exhaustion tend to consolidate rather than develop. What gets lost in those consolidations isn't just a prop. It's a creative engine that, at its best, was generating character development, match quality, and audience investment that the main event picture couldn't provide on its own. Which retired championship do you think WWE most needs to bring back, and why? Let me know down in the comments. And if you want more of these deep dives into wrestling's forgotten history, make sure you're subscribed to Wrestling Decoded. There's plenty more of this still to uncover.